Good morning. I'm Rosemary Pena, Adjunct Professor of German Studies at the University of British Columbia at Vancouver in the Department of Central, Eastern, and Northern European Studies. I'm also the founder and president of the Black German Heritage and Research Association. Dr. Emily Fraser Rath and our students at Davidson College and I welcome you to the 16th event in the BGHRA's All Black Lives Matter series and the 10th produced in collaboration with Davidson College. We are especially thankful to our featured guest, Ines Johnson Spain, for her generosity in sharing her documentary, Becoming Black, with our BGHRA community, and for consenting to this extra special conversation with our wonderful students in our virtual classroom here at Davidson. If you missed our public event last evening, please find it available for your viewing on our YouTube channel. I promise you're in for a treat. If you haven't seen the film yet, it's also available for streaming and purchase on YouTube. So in the interest of time and for the advantage of our students who are eager to be in conversation with our guests, I'll now ask Emily if she would kindly acknowledge our sponsors, share a little about our work together, and introduce our honored guest, Ines Johnson Spain, to our students. Emily?
Thank you, Rosemary. We are, as always, excited to be able to invite our guests to our class today, this time Ines Johnson Spain. We're excited to invite you to Davidson College virtually and to the BGHRA. Today is November 18th, 2021, and we, Dr. Pena, me, and our 8 incredible Davidson students are in our 12th and final full week together in our German 231 class entitled Black German Art and Resistance. As I've mentioned at the beginning of the conversations with all of our guests this semester, Dr. Pena and I co-teach this class together. The class consists of 3 parts. It is first a survey course in the field of Black German studies. Second is a community-based learning course as we support the BGHRA through our work, and will feature our final projects in the BGHRA archive, and some will even appear at the conference to be held in February 2022. Third, and most importantly, it's an opportunity for our students, and through these recordings, our broader BGHRA and Davidson communities, to speak with people whose lives and work intersect with, influence, shape, and inform Black German studies. We'd like to thank the Dean Rusk International Studies Program Speakers Fund for helping to sponsor today's event. In particular, I would like to thank former Dean Rusk Program Director Jane Zimmerman and the former Dean Rusk Program Administrator Sheila Reeves for their support, as well as Verna Case, Interim Director of the Dean Rusk Program, for her continued support. I want to thank the Department of German Studies Administrator, Meg Zwicky, as well as Jennifer Joyce and Susan Caldwell, who work behind the scenes here at Davidson doing all of the logistics work, and whose patience with me I greatly appreciate. Finally, Rosemary and I would like to thank our students in Black German Art and Resistance for all of your thoughtful questions, your curiosity, and your hard work this semester. So thank you, Denai, Katie, Kari, Garrett, Gavin, Pat, Raphael, and Stephen. In a moment, Dr. Pena and I will fade into the background and simply pop up every now and then to moderate for the remainder of our time together. We will allow our students to have the floor. In preparation for today's conversation, we have watched the aforementioned documentary, Becoming Black, which is Ines's beautiful documentary film exploring her family history. We have also attended or viewed the recording of the conversation Ines had yesterday with Dr. Angelica Fenner from the Waterloo Center for German at the University of Toronto, Dr. Keith Green, the Director of Africana Studies at Rutgers University Camden, and Dr. Rosemary Pena, President of the BGHRA. This recording, as Rosemary mentioned, can be found on the Black Germans YouTube page alongside this recording with our conversation with our students. So finally, it is an honor to introduce Ines Johnson-Spain to our class today. Ines is an independent German Togolese filmmaker based in Berlin. She studied the sciences of religion at the Freie Universität Berlin, or the FU, and was a guest student for fine arts and painting at the University of Arts in Berlin. She worked for many years as a scenic painter and has had various positions in art departments in national and international film productions. Becoming Black is her first full-length feature film. And I'll leave it there and ask Ines to please begin and introduce yourself in your own words. And I'll turn it over to our students as well now.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for having me in your beautiful class. It's a pleasure for me to look in your beautiful faces, young faces. And also it's really nice to see some faces, because yesterday we were mostly talking under each other, and I couldn't really see the people with whom I was also communicating. So thank you for this. And yes, I'm very much, for me, it's not so much to say about myself, because you have seen the film, you have an impression of a big part of my life. And I'm curious how, what you think about it, or what kind of questions you have. So please just start.
So who would like to begin questions today? You don't even need to raise your hand, just speak.
Should we make a game?
I'm sure you have some comment or question to make.
I think I have a question. Good
Okay.
morning.
Please.
Thank you for being here today. So while watching the movie, I was wondering what it means becoming that something that's part of your identity. Because for me, when I think, or at least how I used to think of identity before that class and before we had all those discussions with people, I would think of identity as something that I always had with me and I would just evolve, which is not the case for what we see in the movie. It's about an identity that's acquired later in in the life of person. So can you talk a little more about the process? Like, how do you feel like it's something that was always yours and you lost and you're kind of gaining back, or is it something completely new which you're trying to like make yourself fit in? I'm not sure if I'm clear.
Yes, I understood, I think. Thank you. It's an interesting question. Actually, I agree with you that we are born with a certain kind of understanding of identity. So a concept, what we think, who we are, what we want, and what we want to become. And so there's a certain kind of base, and you can call it identity. But there's, in relation to this, something where we always have to bring it in relation, in which way it confirms this or is questioning this. And I think this is a process which will go for our whole life. So my understanding of identity is not something that I just found while I was going to West Africa or making this film. It is something which is changing my whole life. And actually my conviction is that it is something which is changing for everybody as long as we are on this planet. And this is also something which is important for me, because there's also some people saying identity is something you reach or you find, and which is something which is definite or limited or fixed. And for me, it's not like this. For me, it's much more that it's an ongoing process of changing and of wanting to know, of learning, and of development on every level. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Somebody else have a question? Comment?
If not, I ask you.
That sounds good.
I have a question. I was wondering if your inspiration for the film was from your own experiences of embracing your identity, or as a collective inspiration, like seeing it in other people, or a combination of both, or if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, because you never developing ideas or concepts without the outside reflection. And in my case, it was a very, it was especially, I was especially aware of this outside gaze. So there was me, and that what I was feeling, experiencing, and so on. And on the other hand, there was the outside, and I was always trying to make sense of it. And I saw that there's a gap, the way how the people, the majority of the people saw me, and the way how I thought I am or I wanted to be. And so I had to find a way how to deal with this. And to come to this film, what was very much inspired by this contradiction, to feel there's a certain, a certain, I don't know the English word, a certain way how I was addressed. Of course, also racialized, but not only this. And on the other hand, to be in conflict with this, in relation to that what I was feeling. So this was a kind of engine also to drive this idea forward, to that it would be necessary to deal with where I'm coming from, and to delete or kind of destroy this taboo around my upbringing. So I would say it's always something which is infecting each other. So the outside and the inside. And I guess you too. You all will always have conflicts with the way how you will be percepted. No, how do you say? Or seen from the outside, from your surroundings, from your parents, your family, your friends, but also people you don't know, from institutions and so on, and then to what you are thinking, what you are or you want to be. So there's always a gap, and for some it is a bigger gap or more difficult, and for some it is maybe more easy and more fitting to the expectations from the outside, I guess.
Yesterday, I was known for long questions, but today I have a real short one that I will interject, keeping with this theme that we've already begun to discuss. Identity is such an expansive theme, and for you, as you've just so eloquently articulated. Can I ask, please, then, how you came to the title? Because I think that this is what is provoking many questions. You know, it's a very short, succinct title, but it means so much. So how did you come to those two words?
inspired was this title through this sentence of Simone de Beauvoir, this writer and philosopher, French writer and philosopher, who was writing, for example, this book, Das andere Geschlecht, the other gender. And she was famous, for example, for this sentence, you are not born as a woman, you become a woman. And I very much like this double meaning of this sentence. And I also liked the temporality, this that it's not something which is fixed, that it's something which just describes already a process. So in this title is already, for me, is already included this process. And already this is something which is questioning this concept of identity is something fixed, like you are born as a certain, I don't know, ethnic or in a certain country, in a certain region, a certain gender and all this, and there's no way out of it. So I wanted to question this already in the title, and this becoming does it for me. On the other hand, it also describes, I mean, it's for me, it's also double layered. Like in one, on one hand, I was born as a child, and I didn't know anything about black or white or anything. So I just was a child, and slowly I had this experience that people would say I'm other, I'm different than everybody else. Although as a small child, I never thought about it, that I would be other. I thought I'm like everybody else, I'm a child. But then I learned it is very important that I'm a bit darker than other people and in my surrounding. And you have to know in Germany, and especially in the GDR, the main society was really white. There was no other ethnies, or there was even no very little other cultures or also European nationalities in the country. So it was, you could feel really lonely if you are looking in a different way, and if people say this is important, the way how you look. And so this was one experience to understand there's something about you which differentiates yourself from everybody else. And on the other hand, it was, of course, also this appropriation of what it means to be a Black person. And not only on a general level, this is for me something which is a process. Also in my case, in a very personal, in my personal situation, it was also something that needed a long time to understand what it means to be a Black person in the GDR and then later in Germany. And now it's even not important anymore if it is Germany or Europe or whatever. It's only that I'm trying to find, or I'm still trying to find a relationship to the position I have in this world. And I think that's something you all can relate to. I mean, you all have to find out what is your position in relation to everybody else. Patrick?
So just going, first of all, I just want to thank you for coming today. And I think the film was awesome. I think it was really well made and everything. But anyways, So I have a question about identity. And so you're talking about how we all kind of develop an identity throughout like living, and we learn more and more, and that kind of changes our identity. So I was just wondering if you think do you think it's important to question identity, and how do you go about doing it so it's not destructive to yourself, if that makes sense?
Yeah, this is something important actually. I think you cannot avoid to question these or to raise these questions about identity, because the whole identity, the whole society is asking this question. Where are you coming from? Who is your family? And in which social level is your family coming from? And to which ethnic you belong, and all these questions are omnipresent. They are always there, so you have to relate to them. And then there's also, of course, questions of gender. What does it mean for me to be what is called a man, or what does it mean to be addressed as a woman or girl or something like this? All these are questions you are confronted your whole life with. So there's no escape to these questions. And I think there's something in these questions which is healthy, because imagine you would just always say, I'm this, I'm Patrick, I'm I don't know where you're coming from, but let's say you're from Dallas and you are for forever and ever this southern boy, or later on man, which is related to a certain kind of behavior maybe, and all this. So it's very necessary to develop your own perspective to this. If not, you don't feel free. You are not allowed to go in another direction and to say, now I'm not Patrick from Dallas anymore. Now I'm just Patrick, because I want to live wherever I want, and I want to move however I want, and all this. So it's very important to question this. But I agree with you that there is also a danger of stressing it too much, that it becomes destructive. So there's supposed to, or it's important to also accept on a certain, or let's say in the moment, that there's something where you can say, that's me. This is very important. So that you can say, today I'm this, I love this, I eat this, or I love eating this, for example. I love hearing this music, I love reading this books, and my dream is to go to, I don't know, Paris. But the important thing is that you allow yourself to question this again and again. And tomorrow you might say, no, I don't, it's not my dream anymore to go to Paris. Now it's my dream to live in Alaska. And all this is one aspect of myself. So there is a certain function in this questioning, but of course it is necessary in the moment to accept yourself and to accept that you really want this today, which doesn't mean you want this tomorrow. Does it make sense? Rosemary is laughing.
I'm waiting. I'm looking for another raised hand.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if nobody else is gonna go. I was wondering, you were talking earlier about the becoming side of becoming Black, and with I don't remember who asked the question, but about that. And I think a lot, from what I got, at least a lot of what you were saying was about becoming kind of your own version of the identity that's like pushed onto you by society, kind of like whatever stereotypes come with whatever identity you are a part of. So I was just wondering how, like, if you could elaborate on how that affected you growing up, and a little more, I guess, and how you find that like you can shape your personal identity outside of what society expects, I guess.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting talk here with you. It's quite philosophical. Yes, maybe you remember this text in the film about this girl in the school when I see there's another black girl, because I was totally used to it, to always be the only one, the only black girl in the whole school. This was how it was in East Germany. And then suddenly there's this other girl, and I reacted in a certain way, like rejecting her. I couldn't see her. I was feeling uncomfortable seeing her, and so on. And this really had an impulse or consequence to my behavior towards her. And this is for me something where I see in a very little story how society is created. Because of course, that I was rejecting this girl had so much to do with my own internalized racism I was experiencing before. So it was so unquestioned that I didn't understand when I was rejecting this girl that I was actually rejecting myself, and that I had learned this in society. And that it was not something which came naturally to me. And so it was a very long way to come to this point, to admit to myself that I was following certain patterns which were learned, which were I don't know the word, but which came from society and not from me. And this is a quite hurtful process to understand how much I gave up myself. And I think this is something which is really, how I said already, where you can see how this this education in a small unit like a family can really create society. I think I forgot the second part of your question, or did I?
No, I think you kind of covered it. I was just, yeah, I think that was the whole question.
Okay. But it was something which was really important for me, because this was really part of this liberation, what I experienced, that I could understand how society is functioning and how it made me becoming this little girl rejecting another black girl.
If I can expand on that just a little bit, that moment with the little girl was important, and you're able to articulate and analyze it now. But was there a moment before the film that sort of catalyzed this shift in your thinking that helped you to also look inward at how you were feeling about yourself? Was there a shift, or was that with the movie, or did it inspire the movie, if that makes sense?
I think it was inspiring the movie. And there were different impulses, different effects leading to this. And one was when I was finding this file about my father, to find out that my father is from Africa. And this was something which I mean, I read it and I had to accept that this is now my truth. And in the beginning, I couldn't deal with this. I was really shocked, and I can say I had really thoughts like, why couldn't my father not come from South Europe, like Italy or France? Why does it have to be an African man? Because this was such a big step for me to also to accept that it is something which bears a big problem. Was very difficult in this age. I was 13 when I found it, so it was difficult. And another impulse that made me understanding that there's something that has to be solved was that I was sick for a long time. So I had stomach problems for a long time. And this was actually the consequence of this hidden, of this secret, which made that I couldn't trust my own feelings. So I started to avoid to believe to my feelings and to my emotions. And that really made me sick. And so when I, of course, you want to become healthy again, and I started to try to find ways to deal with this. And after a while of treatments and therapies and so on, I noticed that it wasn't a physical source. It was because of a soul damage or hurt. And so I had to approach it on this level. And so this was also one of the motivations to question the position to myself, and also the position to other Black people, to Black community and so on. And and as you can imagine, it was a long way. Maybe one more thing to Patrick, what you were saying, because you were saying how to avoid that the search or questioning of identity becomes something destructive. I think something which is really important is, for example, this, to really listen to your emotions, to your feelings, and to take them serious, and not to try to ignore them just to fulfill certain expectations of society. And one very important step for me was on this way to this was to be or to follow very much my intuition. This was something what I had to learn, because it was destroyed on this way of not trusting my own feelings. And when I was relearning it, I could really see the value of this, and it's still guiding me through my life.
What were some things that helped you to better understand your emotions, or like people? Were there certain people, or were there certain, I don't know, even books or movies or things that helped you to do that?
I think it was a reflection process, like observing myself and seeing, for example, I mean, you all know these situations where you had a certain feeling towards for example, a decision you have to make, and then you decide not along your own intuition or what you were feeling, you decide what would be the most reasonable from the perspective of perspective of the society. And then afterwards you see it wasn't right. Actually, your first impulse was right. So it is a question of experience and to observe this and to see. I mean, you know this, you might know this feeling. If I would have trusted this first feeling, then I might have been better, or it would have been right, or something like this. And so I just started to observe this, and then to notice that it's much, it is something that brings the better results for me. And also, yes, I think it's a question of experience and of really trying to do this in a conscious way, to really decide I follow my intuition and see where it leads me. And I think you should just try it, and then you will make certain experiences, and then you can see, was it right or was it wrong, and where does it bring me, and is it where I want to go, you know?
So it involves being like very active in yourself instead of being passive, like focusing on those thoughts, those emotions, and trying to really figure out what they mean, right?
I mean, there are physical clues, you know, like you all know this. There are physical signs. If something is feeling right, you feel it. There is, I don't know, it feels good. It's not that you are getting tensed and things like this. So you feel relaxed, you feel well, you feel spacious and things like this, and you don't feel questioned and so on. And it can be a principle to always go where you feel good. And that's what I'm doing. Doesn't mean to be egoistic or to do it against somebody. It's really, for me, it's something I really had to learn to go where I feel good. And this is, it relates to or concerns everything. My relation to people, to what I eat, to where I want to be, and all this, what I want to wear, or, you know, all level. And it's an exercise, and it's a very interesting, and I think a very, yeah, I would say a very important exercise.
I'd like to expand that again a little, if I may. We're talking a lot about your feelings now in response to the imposition of structural racism and ideas. And it's been sort of you against the world in that realm, especially in your childhood. I think something that stood out for me is that the people around you seem to have been totally oblivious to your feelings, so much so that I think one of the most striking conversations was the one with your brother. It seems like you were raised together and had totally different understandings of your childhood. So, you know, it, for me, I think it pains me to see that you experienced that alone, and the people who were close to you in some ways contributed, but in other ways were blinded to your feelings. Um, and I guess I would like to say thank you, because I think that number one, this is a problem not only in families, but in the world, right? That people are insensitive to what other peoples are experiencing, and they may be people very close to them. And so I'm wondering if the film has done anything to heal that relationship with your brother, or to help him understand differently about who his sister is.
Yes. I mean, it's like you say that we all experience this, that people cannot understand our own world. But the first step is for us to understand our world and to embrace this world and to stand for it and to fight for it and so on. And if we do this, then there's a bigger chance that other people are understanding us better, I think. And with my brother, it was a little bit like this, that I first had to embrace who I am and to be more conscious about it. And then I could start to exchange with him, even though he still has his own perception of the past. You know, I won't change this because he's very different from me, and I can also accept it. I don't need him to see my past like I did it, but we started to converse about it. So we started to communicate about it, and he was very astonished then to learn all these things which were really new to him. And also this has something to do with society, because normally boys are much more, or let's say less questioned by the parents in comparison with girls. And so for him was no need to question his own perceptions of our past. And yeah, I just want to say, I don't want it to make him change or something like this. I just wanted him to listen to me, and he did. So it also kind of healed our relationship in this way, that we can now communicate about it and exchange this.
Thank you. Is there another question from one of our students? If not, I have one in our chat.
Actually, I thought that Garrett wanted to say something.
Garrett wanted to say something wonderful. Go, Garrett.
How's it going? The question I had for you was, what would you say in your film the role of the camera and like the sound play and the music was?
The camera was something very important, because I think it allowed my stepfather to start to talk about this whole past, because I was asking him several times about this, or my experience of the childhood, and he always didn't really went into it. He kind of denied, or he said, for example, I can't remember, or if I was asking, where is this file, he was saying, no, there was no file, was there a file, or something like this. So it was for a long time that he didn't really was willing to open all this talk up. And there's an interesting thing about camera, that it creates a certain space where you are on one hand, you are aware, or you are conscious that there's an outside gaze. And on the other hand, it's possible to also forget this. It's a kind of schizophrenic thing. So it was like a setup in which we could move. So we could talk about what we couldn't talk about before. And it's also what delivers a certain kind of security, because you wouldn't really mess up. You don't start to fight in front of camera. So there's a certain limitation of how you behave, you know, and it's something really interesting. And on the same time, in the same time, you try to be honest. You really think, what was it? Or at least in our case, it was like this, that we tried to be honest, even if there are some parts where we both decided not to talk about it. It's really something very specific, which is not possible to compare with any situation without a camera. And for the camera, for example, it was for me very important that I think I said this already yesterday, that we didn't create a situation to attack somebody, or especially my stepfather. It was very important that I was showing we are both in the same situation. We are both trying to find out. We both don't know what to expect and what will be the result of this conversation. And this was also reflected by the way how the camera was set up. Like, we were sitting next to each other, not in front of each other. We were sitting next to each other, like friends or people who are talking with you, have a chat, you know. And another thing was that for me it was necessary or important that in the whole film it was a handheld camera. I don't know if you noticed, but for me it was necessary, or not necessary, but I wanted this because it made this personal, or the privacy of the film underlined this, and to not have this static Behauptung. How do you say Behauptung? You know, like, do you know this, Rosemary? Behauptung? No? Okay. So that it is really my very personal perspective on the whole story, and it doesn't means it's supposed, or it should be the same what my acclaim, thank you. It shouldn't be what my stepfather would say about the same story, you know. So to make it more personal. And another thing with the music, I mean, it was a very beautiful cooperation with Jean-Paul Bourrelli, who is a jazz musician, guitarist, composer, who was working with a lot of really famous musicians, like, for example, Miles Davis. And his music was meant to create, again, another level and another space, which is adding something to these different layers of conversation, of talks, of images, and so on. So that there is opening up another room or another atmosphere. And or let's say, how did you hear this music, for example, Garrett?
So like in between scenes, or sometimes like at one part where towards the end, where there was like a group of people looking at a photo, there was just like background music that I thought just added to the effect of like just like a surprising kind of, like how the people were surprised,
Mm-hmm.
like how it made, like brought out that emotion more, or that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to describe, but I feel like it almost like evoked an emotion, like it went along with like the emotion of the people in the film. how they were
No,
feeling.
cool. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
I would like to add to that that you mentioned yesterday that the most of the interviews or that the film was largely unscripted. And in those moments when you were in those sensitive moments, for example, you didn't speak a lot, but I think that we understood or you conveyed your feelings through your countenance and through your face. I wonder if there was any moment in the filming where you wanted to stop or did stop and that we don't see. And what are your favorite parts of the film?
Yes, there was one moment where I needed to stop, and this was actually, I mean, you see the scene when I was talking about this this memory when I had to change the side of the road whenever I was meeting an African person. And this that hurt me very much, and after this I couldn't really continue to talk. So you see the situation, but you don't see the moment when I said, "Oh, please stop! I need a break." And it's true that I mean all the talks in the film were not scripted. Only in the talk for the talk with Armin, which was the most emotional and most difficult for me because it was so many years not talked about. I had to make just a little paper with some words on it because I was afraid that, or let's say the other way around, if trauma is there, sometimes it does blend certain thoughts, and you are not able to catch the thought. It will escape you again and again. So I knew about it, and as I was sure I wanted to go through this and I wanted to raise all the questions, I just made some notes. And this was actually the only time where I was making or preparing myself in this way, that I really had some notes with me. But all the other time, I really just went into the situation with a certain question and was then open to go where it leads me. And you were adding a last question on the end, which was going in a totally different direction. What was it, Rosemary? Sound, please.
Yeah.
Unmute.
Well, we were talking, we're highlighting now, I guess, what you might call the saddest parts of the film.
Okay.
Difficult parts. So I was asking on the other side of that, what were some of your favorite moments? And when you watch the film, which moments give you the most joy?
It's different things. On one level, during the shooting, one of my highlights was this scene with my siblings and my nieces and nephews, because we don't see each other so often in this round. So I was really just enjoying it, to be with them, to have some good food, and to just share a moment together. So I was really enjoying it. And there are different moments which I really liked during the shooting. Also, these the end scene with the fishermen, I really enjoyed, because it's quite difficult in West Africa to shoot with these fishermen because they have a lot of mistrust towards camera or people who come and that want to film them. So we really had to establish a certain relationship with them. and this was really nice. It was a very nice experience. And one moment which I really like if I see the film is something which is totally tiny, but I love it, is when there is the ceremony in this family temple, and I say to my aunt, oh, you have drinking, you drank everything, or I don't know what I say exactly, but I show her the empty cup. And this is very much me, you know, like not really thinking, just saying. And I was in the same time aware of the comic of this situation, and I like this. Also to show that these kind of ceremonies don't have to be in this I don't know, immense serenity or something like this. It's possible to take them easy and to joke about it and so.
Thank you. And yes, I did notice that. I said, oh, she didn't leave any left. And then it appeared as though you were holding the cup out for someone to pour more, but the ceremony continued. So I was
Yes.
like, oh, poor Ines, you get one. Maybe later. Do we have another question from our students?
What about Stephen? Oh no, Carrie, okay.
Oh, I guess my question is kind of on the flip side of Dr. Pena's question. Is there anything, if you were to do the film again, that you would change?
It's a bit difficult somehow. Sometimes I have this tendency to think, what if? But then I think this is just stupid because it took me so much courage and so much effort and so much energy to make this film, and that was what was possible in this moment. Now it's already more than 2 years ago that the film is finished, and so I changed already. Of course, if I would do the same film today, there would be things different, but it doesn't make sense because I did it when I did it, and that was what I was capable for. And yeah. For example, when I was planning this film, I never thought I would make a film with this much talking. And I'm quite sure my next film won't be this, like with this much talking. But it's just how it developed and seemed to be necessary. And so I just had to accept it. I don't know if it was yesterday because I had so much talks these last weeks, but sometimes I say for me, yes, I think it was yesterday too. Sometimes I say for me, this film, or if any film, is also a being, and this being has a certain needs, and so sometimes you cannot really. You can have this idea in your head and thinking, oh, I want to put all these different beautiful images around, but then this being of film needs something else, and you have to accept it. And so in this way, I would like to respond to this question.
Well, how long did it take you exactly from conception to end? And how did you know you were finished? At what moment did you say, this is it, it's enough?
Good question. I mean, altogether, it was more than 7 years. I was working on the film, but I, of course, wasn't working every day for 7 years on this film, because this includes also times where I had to to gain some distance and to not be involved, because if not, it would have been too much. And so I really needed in between sometimes to digest and also sometimes to yeah, to work with my hands or to paint or anything like this, to yeah, gain distance, I would say. And but altogether it was like 7 years, and the editing process was about 3 months, no more, a little bit more than 3 months, but 3 months I was working with the editor every day with her. And so there is also a natural limitation by budget because you have a certain amount of days you can pay for the editor. And so it was clear we had to finish after this 3 months. We really had to finish, and you just make it possible. And for me, to know that it was finished was after some rough cut screenings we did with friends, with colleagues, and so on. And then a very important step was when we were showing the film in a cinema, in an empty cinema. We were just watching it to see how it functions on the big screen. And this was very important because there was still some things where I thought, there I need a little bit more space to breathe, or I need a little to become a bit faster, or something like this. It was tiny changes in editing, and after this, I took all my courage and said, "It's a wrap."
I just like to highlight again, and thank you for sharing the tremendous amount of emotional labor aside from the technical and artistic work that went into this film. I think that even in writing or in whatever form of storytelling, I think sometimes it gets lost on the audience, the amount of emotional labor that is involved.
I'm actually not sure if it really get lost, because what I receive as feedbacks is very much exactly this, that even if the people are not conscious about what I have done, they feel it in themselves, that they are touched, or that they are moved in a certain way, and reminded to their own stories where they need maybe to confront something, and so on. And so my experience with this is quite good, that even if people, I mean, I don't, it's very nice if you say this and you appreciate it in a conscious way, but even if people don't do this, but they still are open to let be touched or moved by the film, then for me it's already successful, you know.
Wonderful. Then your film is actually doing the work, and
Yes, exactly.
your
Exactly.
emotional investment is being multiplied and returned, and
Yes.
that is exactly, I suppose, the sign of success that you sought. So I'm very happy to hear that.
Yes.
Is there one more comment or question before we close from our students?
Yes,
Stephen?
Stephen.
I liked how at the end of the movie you ended with a scene with you and your siblings having the picnic, because I feel like it like kind of, I don't know, like with your life story being told throughout the film, obviously they have their own life stories and hardships that they had to go through. This is more of like a comment, but I really liked how it like brought everything together. There was like a sense of community, family, and togetherness, like at the end of the film, that kind of brought like, I don't know, just like a positive light at the end.
Thank you. Thank you. May I ask something?
Absolutely.
What was the scene that really touched you in the film?
Danai?
I think it was in the first half of the film when you were talking about encountering other black people in the street and they would disappear that your parents come from East Germany. I think that's what like touched me the most because I just wouldn't expect no one to be that persistent with asking why this happened, like why are your parents from there? And then it's also more surprising knowing that it's black people who'd ask that in Germany. Like I would expect them to be more, first of all, understanding and then respectful, just because they have experienced discrimination, they have experienced uncomfortable questions. So I think that was the part that kind of touched me the most.
Ah, this is interesting. So you would have thought that this African people who asked me where my parents are coming from supposed to be more sensitive.
Yes.
Oh, okay. This is interesting because I don't see this in this way because for me, I mean, in perspective or now, I found it totally normal that they saw something in me where they thought I might come from their countries, which was the case, but I didn't know. So for me, it's not something which is not respectful or something. It was curiosity. In the country where almost no African people, it's something that really stands out. If you see somebody who looks a bit like you, that you might be interested to know, is it the case that we are coming from the same country or we have the same ancestry or something like this?
Yeah, that's different perspective. At least for me now, being an international, I maybe it's Davidson, I'm not sure. I don't feel comfortable asking people where they're from, even if they're internationals. Or I could ask, but not try to make an assumption. I mean, I might make an assumption because we're all human. We, you know, even if we try to contain it, sometimes we might make an assumption without wanting it. But I feel like I'm really careful, especially with internationals, just because I don't like people making assumptions for like where I'm from.
I totally understand this because we are living in a totally different time
Right.
now, and also you are living in the States, I guess, in Canada, and there it's totally different. You cannot imagine how it was in the GDR, you know? There was just no Greek people, there was no Italian people, there was very few African people. And if you then once in a month see an African person, then or a black person, then of course you have another way of looking to this other person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Is there somebody else who would like to say something? Because for me it's interesting because, you know, you have another cultural background and so on. So it's interesting for me to understand where you might be touched, or maybe you haven't been touched at all. It's possible too, of course. So no emotional relation to the film.
I mean, I was gonna say the same one as Denai. I don't know. I don't want to repeat what she said. I didn't have exactly the same reasoning, I guess. Mine was just more, I think, because we talked about that a lot in this class, in this space, also with other people who have visited the class, I think, about like things that make different people uncomfortable, whatever. So I found it interesting to put that when that was in the film. But I don't think I was necessarily shocked in the way that Deny was. I think it was just kind of like it intrigued me, I guess.
The same scene, you mean?
I think for Enos's benefit, I'll explain just a little. Enos, in a lot of conversations, and particularly those coming from West Germany, a lot of our guests have talked about the questions that they still receive incessantly from primarily white Germans. You know, where are you from? When are you going back? Where are you really from? Not Hamburg or Berlin. You know, this kind of questioning. So I think that it's totally different in terms of the time period and also the context of the DDR. But I think that helps explain a little bit of the difference between how other guests that have visited have articulated that same.
Mhm. I understand this, yes. Okay, if nobody else wants to share something about how they felt during watching this.
I think I agree with Stephen. It's gotten to the point in the semester where I'm missing my family. So seeing your family all come together was one of my favorite parts of the film.
Thank you.
I think something for me that was like emotionally hit me was also your conversations with your adoptive father. Because you talked about how this was sort of the first time you had it, like started to have a discussion with him about your past and your family and so on and so forth. And those discussions are super important. And I think that with family, we often tend to not have discussions that we should have. I know that's something I've struggled with. So just seeing that and like gave me hope in a sense for myself, to have those conversations.
Thank you very much.
It's not the same conversation, but just to,
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, our time is up. Our students have to go, but we are eternally grateful to Ines Johnson Spain for joining us again this morning. And as always, we appreciate Davidson College for making these important conversations possible. Emily and I couldn't be prouder of our students who have made the entire semester an absolute joy. Please stop by our website at bghra.org and follow us on Eventbrite, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to learn more about future events in our All Black Lives Matter series. Our YouTube channel boasts recordings from all of the earlier episodes in this series and from our 4 international conferences. Today's recording will soon be among them. Mark your calendars for February 17th to the 20th, 2022, when we will host the 5th BGHRA conference virtually in partnership with Africana Studies at Rutgers University, Camden. We hope that you've enjoyed our discussion as much as we have this morning, and as always, until the next time, we thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.